美观的几位人就是几个代家庭。
It clearly all weighs heavily on Pastor Ezra Jin that he got so lucky while others did not. He is here to talk about his story, but he's also here to talk about China and the ways he hopes it can change.
我们初步的估计还有100多位牧者还在这个监狱里啊。除了这些牧师之外，还有好多其他的信仰群体，还有一些良心犯。千万不要认为我一个人释放，好像是 happy ending。
But are Chinese Christians still living in a lot of fear? Are people still quite worried?
教案也非常频繁的发生，很多的教会的信徒也是很恐惧。官员就是很理直气壮的说：“今天我要看共产党厉害还是你们的上帝厉害。”这种意识形态的冲突来，他们处理问题的，那么就是教案就越来越频发。
And what is your message for President Xi Jinping? What do you think he should or could do now in relation to churches like yours?
中国问题啊，需要最高领导人英明的做出决定。有的人就是说，习能改变吗？习会做这样的事情吗？他能做吗？这个我不知道，但是有一点很重要，有一天，我是真的坚信，中国家庭教会会合法化，因为这是好，从某种意义上对政府好，对社会好，对共产党也好。
This is baby Ezra. He's named after his grandpa, Pastor Ezra Jin.
Grace took these videos for us when her baby was just a few days old, and things still felt very bleak.
We are really grateful that we have this bundle of joy in this season of difficulties.
She could barely have imagined then how soon baby Ezra would meet with his namesake.
所以每天这样看的时候，都抱着的时候也都特别的感恩，特别感恩。就是我觉得现在我死也是我是没有遗憾的，我没有什么遗憾，我特别的高兴。
China has not commented on the release of Pastor Jin. It says all cases will be handled in accordance with the law.
Finish, you know.
It insists that religion is free and protected and rejects what it calls foreign interference. For this family, this feels like a miracle. But there are many others still waiting for theirs.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Big Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Tonight on The Wrap, hundreds of thousands are forced to flee their homes as wildfires burn in France and Spain. The military is deployed to tackle blazes near Bordeaux as the government in Madrid declares a national emergency. Here in the UK, a plea for military assistance as a major incident is declared over wildfires burning in the Cairngorms. Social care, youth employment and defence are on the agenda, with Andy Burnham expected to give a major speech in the coming week. Students in India's so-called cockroach movement call off their protests as the education minister quits. We discuss the day's biggest stories with broadcaster and commentator Duncan Barks and Iconic Media's editor-in-chief Nancy Fielder. Plus, the first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers from 1:30. Good evening. We start with breaking news this evening coming out of Berlin, and that is that there is a major police operation underway. Several people have been injured after an incident involving a car crashing into a crowd. This was at the Christopher Street Day parade at Berlin Tiergarten. The parade has now been cancelled as police continue this operation. But as I say, just to reiterate, several people have been injured and the police operation is ongoing. We will, of course, keep you updated on that story throughout the course of the evening. But now, firefighters are struggling to contain huge wildfires burning out of control across southern Europe. The situation is worst in France and Spain, where around 250,000 people have been forced to flee their homes. The French Prime Minister has tonight said his country is facing an historic situation and warned of difficult hours to come. In Spain, a state of national emergency has been declared, though a change of weather conditions helped crews near to Madrid. Sky's Sadia Chowdhury reports from southwest France.
For hours and hours, hectares and hectares, the wildfire on the French Atlantic coast burns on. It has burnt through homes, gardens and playgrounds. Not long after the fire swept through this neighbourhood, the ground is still smouldering and it is still hot to touch. The air is really ashy and it's quite difficult to breathe. And all around us, just devastation. No one who stayed could have survived. That's why more than 160,000 people fled this region. Some may never come back. This father and son did, to offer whatever help they can.
We're putting out the small sparks of fire which could spread. We're putting them out to secure the road.
This man shouted profanities at the firefighters. Why, he asks, didn't they save his house? But more than 50 of them have been injured tackling a fast-moving and violent blaze now in its fourth day. They're beefed up by the European Union's Civil Defence Mechanism, a multinational effort which has had to deploy to Spain too. The Spanish Prime Minister toured the coordination centre and warned the fires there are entering a particularly dangerous phase.
We're going to face some challenging hours ahead because while temperatures have dropped, we don't know exactly how the winds will develop, what their intensity will be, or whether or not dry storms will actually occur as a result of these fires.
In France, the fire continues eastwards. And that's where evacuees have taken shelter.
We didn't know where the fire was, whether it was close by or not. That was it. The panic came mostly from not knowing what was actually happening. We grabbed a few odds and ends, quickly got into the car and left.
It was a bit frightening for the kids, especially my daughters, who said, "Look, Dad, ash is falling on the bungalow." At that point, we started to get a bit worried. And even though we initially told ourselves it was far away, we could see the threat getting closer.
They came for a holiday and fled for their lives. And they're still not safe from danger.
And the extremely worrying thing is that this is an ongoing situation. So far, about 270,000 people across Spain and France evacuated from their homes, and weather conditions predicted not to be favourable, which means this could spread even further.
Yeah, it's uncontrollable, and the figures involved in this are just really stark. I mean, you know, you're talking about 250,000 people displaced from their homes, having to flee their properties. Look at the front page of The Observer, 80,000 acres burning outside Madrid, 54,000 acres across France. I mean, those are vast figures. It's really hard to comprehend.
Yeah, the French minister is saying that 30 wildfires are active. Nearly, as we said, 100,000 hectares have already been burned. This is Sébastien Lecornu, the French PM. They are describing it as a complete disaster and unprecedented.
And I think what's really terrifying is this is not a one-off. This almost feels like the future that we've got to get used to. We've known this was coming. We've seen it in lots of parts of the world, and it is getting closer and closer. As we know, even in the UK right now, nothing on this scale, but still terrifying scales. And as you say, there is nothing that human beings can do at this stage to fight it.
Yeah. We have heard previous quotes coming out of France and Spain suggesting that exactly that they are helpless, that they really cannot contain these fires. We've also heard from a British expat in Andalusia in Spain to hear how he was dealing with the fires.
Yeah, at the moment we are safe. We've been told not to leave the house or vacate the village. A lot of people did earlier, but we decided to stay because we just didn't panic, and they don't want people clogging the roads up because there's emergency vehicles. So a lot of it's under control, but as you can see from behind, new pockets are springing up all the time. So they're constantly trying to put fires out. We're on a level 1 emergency, which is the highest. So, you know, they are really working hard to put these out. We've got probably 3 fire planes, helicopters. They're putting down the red extinguisher, and so we're just hoping that we'll be okay. We've got the cars packed up, ready to go just in case, and animal cases out, and we're just hoping and praying that we'll be safe.
Terrifying for them, because the national state of emergency has been declared, and you can't get more severe than
No,
that.
and I mean, I think, you know, it's worth just pausing and reflecting on the bravery of the emergency services, both in Spain and France, because, of course, it's never ending, right? You know, you have these people, some of which are volunteers who are trained to fight fires, and they get no respite because this is ongoing. You can't just draft in a load of volunteers, you know, who are untrained to try and address the situation.
And some have been injured in the course of fighting the fires.
And they live locally, so they're seeing their own houses being destroyed. They'll be with their own families, their own children, and yet, like you say, they've got to go out there and fight it.
And some of the fires, the problem that is facing them is that some of the fires, particularly in Spain, just outside Madrid, have actually merged. So rather than having several fires to deal with, it is one huge blaze.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I was looking at the Sky News website earlier, there's an interesting piece on there about, I think it was in France, where what they've tried to do, what local villagers have tried to do is put in these fire breaks. So what you do is you kind of remove all of the shrubbery and the dry grass and stuff, because if you have a kind of break there, it stops a fire going from one area to another. But of course, that's a remarkably dangerous thing to do. It takes a brave person to, you know, to go out there and try and put in these fire breaks. And I think, you know, unless that happens, we're just going to see this spread.
Yeah, we know that in France, 1,500 military personnel have been deployed, so all resources are being put towards fighting these fires.
But it raises the question, we're too late almost, aren't we? The actual debate needs to be about what we do overall as the human race to help the planet, because it's not even the hottest month of the year yet in large parts of Europe. It's not. We're not forecasting huge rainfalls. No. We're forecasting more heat waves. We're struggling here. The temperatures have been really hot here. We've gone from being flooded in spring to host pipe bans. And if we don't take it seriously, well, people are dying. People are already losing their houses, and yet still we don't really think climate change is something we need to act on.
I think that's a really good point. I certainly, you know, even someone's watching Sky News this evening who might be quite cynical when it comes to climate change. And, you know, I sometimes find myself raising an eyebrow, how much of it is man-made, how much of it is natural climate change. But regardless of where you sit in the debate, you have to acknowledge the extremes in our weather. It's plain to see over the last couple of years, and you've just summed it up brilliantly. You know, flooding earlier this year in various parts of the UK. Now we have, you know, what's going on in Scotland. I mean, it's there for everyone to witness.
Yeah. Let's turn to the situation here now. And in the UK, the Scottish Government has called on Westminster to deploy the military to tackle wildfires in the Cairngorms. Police declared a major incident and hundreds of people have been evacuated due to the fires, which have been burning now for 10 days. Sky's Fraser Maud reports.
10 days on, and despite being fought on the ground and from the air, still the fires burn. On Friday night, the wildfires were declared a major incident. Changing winds, accelerating the spread of the blaze, prompted Police Scotland to evacuate the village of Nethy Bridge. A firebreak has been established around the village as fire crews try to establish breaks in other areas to slow the fire's relentless advance. The firefighters' efforts have been widely praised, but many think the government's response should have been quicker and more decisive.
This is the worst fire we've had here in living memory, and probably a lot longer than living memory. We feel completely let down by the Scottish Government, who dithered. Last Wednesday and Thursday, they were saying that they had sufficient resources to fight the blaze. We need to have in place a contract helicopter system between, let's say, April and September, the fire season, that there is always a helicopter available for instant dispatch.
The Scottish Government's Resilience Room, the equivalent of Cobra, was again reconvened early on Saturday. Ministers maintained that appropriate resources are available.
We've had helicopters available throughout the course of this week. We have 2 available today, and we're expecting that to increase tomorrow. Of course, we keep under review our response to the ever-growing threat of wildfires, and having aerial support is part of that tactical response, as is ensuring that we have the necessary ground support to be able to tackle these wildfires.
Despite those reassurances, Scotland's First Minister has now confirmed that a request has been made to the UK government for military assistance in aerial support to supplement existing resources. Those who know the area well say they've never seen fires like this.
We could see the smoke probably about 4.5, maybe 5 miles away from where we are. It is significant, the impact that it's had on the area. And I myself have seen, fires before, but this is something of it looks like an apocalyptic scale.
Smoke warnings have been issued to areas downwind of the wildfires, and the fire service has appealed for more bulldozers and heavy equipment to help it in what at times must seem an almost impossible task. Fraser Maud, Sky News.
And Nancy, you were just saying there, watching that you would not expect this to be the situation in Scotland, of all places, in the United Kingdom.
No, absolutely. I mean, we all associate Scotland with too much rain and really cold temperatures. In fact, somebody at work who was up there, heading up there to see his parents in Aberdeen this week, said, oh, don't worry, there won't be a heat wave up there. But actually, the ground is so dry and the environment has shifted so fundamentally that we're seeing this. And it looks like something out of a Hollywood movie. It really doesn't look real. I mean, the images from France and Spain, it feels like it's not real, except this is what people are living. And these areas are not coming back. It's a beautiful area, gorgeous part of the world. And those trees and the wildlife is not going to come back at the click of a finger.
Yes, Scottish First Minister requesting military assistance, again declaring a state of emergency. And as you were saying before, Duncan, we were talking on the previous story with Spain and France, there has been no provision for this.
No, and what strikes me about what's happening in Scotland is these fires, or this fire has been raging since the 15th of July, so this has been ongoing, and I think only now we're starting to actually go, oh, this is quite serious stuff. I think Westminster needs to swing into action and give Scotland the support that it clearly needs here, because, there's only a certain amount of resource available in Scotland, and clearly this is ongoing.
But as we have been saying, that the climate is visibly changing. I mean, all the climate doubters really have not got a leg to stand on now.
I mean, as I say, there is a debate, I think, still to be had about how much of it is man-made and how much of it is natural. But the evidence is clear to see for anyone who's prepared to look at it, which is we have really extreme weather situations in this country. Whether or not it's extreme during the winter or what we're experiencing now, it is there. And I certainly noticed it in the last 3 or 4 years. It's got worse. this. And people will go, yeah, but what about the long, hot summer of 1976? You know,
we've gone past that now.
We've gone past that. And I think that's you know, people are going to take note.
Are you confident, Nancy, that the government, well, it's a new government now, but that governments of old as well have been putting in place provision for these extreme weather events?
No, not at all. I mean, in this country, we are just not prepared, and we're seeing people every winter. We see people die because it gets too cold and they don't want to put on the heating. But now we're seeing people die because it's too hot and we can't cope. If we had things in place, we would be able to try harder to control wildfires. I'm not saying there's a magic answer, but we clearly haven't taken the steps because we're still debating whether this is a real thing. And does it actually matter how we got here? We have got to solve this, and we can't solve it as a country. We can't solve it as the UK. We can't solve it as Europe. It has got to be a worldwide approach, and I think that's the problem, because actually how much of it is political and how much of it is financial, and the people who are making an awful lot of money don't feel that they care at all about climate change. They just want to... Money drives everything, doesn't it? And the world burns.
Well, we've seen these events this year. We saw them similarly last year. Nothing was done in that intervening time. Do you believe that something will be done before our next summer?
Well, it seems we now live in a climate where something awful has to happen before action is initiated, and people go, oh, well, maybe we need to prepare for this. It takes some kind of tragedy, it seems to me, before policy is changed or preparations are made. And you can argue the same with COVID. Go back to the pandemic. We weren't properly prepared for something of that scale. And this is not a political point, but I think successive governments, maybe... I think there's a temptation, because it's quite boring, actually, and not necessarily an instant vote winner, stuff that, you know, if you can kick the can down the road, we'll sort out, you know, some preparations for a possible pandemic at some point later in government or whatever, and stuff falls off the list. And I think, you know, increasingly we're living in a world now where we have these catastrophes, we have these disasters, and we're constantly on the back foot.
Yeah, and certainly not boring now, because it's a clear and present danger, isn't it?
But we still don't want the impact on individual lives, and I think it's so easy now for people to say, well, the billionaires and the political leaders don't care. Why am I recycling my yoghurt pots? And actually, we are in a really dangerous position where I don't think people like us think we can make a difference, and so none of us do much at all.
Let us stay with politics now, because Downing Street sources say the Prime Minister will give a major speech in the coming week, setting out his plans to deal with adult social care. Andy Burnham is also expected to focus on youth employment and make an announcement on defence spending. The new PM already made a series of policy announcements in the first days in office, and it's drawn backlash from the Conservatives, who are calling on him to explain how they will be funded. The Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, says Andy Burnham has made numerous promises but seems to have little idea how he will pay for any of them. These unfunded pledges will only add to concern and speculation about yet more Labour tax rises at the next budget, as well as yet more borrowing, leaving a crippling burden for future generations. Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Amanda Acas, now. I suppose the Conservatives would always be critical in any situation, but they do have a point. We've not been told how any of these pledges will be funded. Is that going to come this week?
Well, I think over the first week we had this flurry of announcements about cost of living policies from Andy Burnham, and we understand that into the second week of his premiership, the focus is going to move into some of those more intractable policy issues. A Number 10 source telling me that Andy Burnham has the courage to fix the most difficult issues which have been ignored for years as seen as impossible. Now, clearly that's quite a claim, but the key issue there is going to be adult social care, which Andy Burnham has previously talked about as broken. We know that he and his family have experience of dealing with the care system because of his father's Alzheimer's. And on his first day in office, he said that he wanted to use some of his political capital to fix the issue, that we need a national conversation about how to pay for a care service set up on the NHS principle, i.e. free at the point of use. Now, the problem, of course, has always been in terms of reforming this area, how on earth we're going to pay for it. And a report out this week suggested that cost could be £18.5 billion a year for a free social care system, not even including food or accommodation for people in care homes. Now, Starmer in 2024, in that manifesto that Labour won the election on, did promise to set up a national care service, but rather kick the can down the road, setting up a review instead, which isn't going to report back till 2028. But it seems Burnham wants to get going on that rather sooner. We're also told this week he's going to be focusing on the issues of youth unemployment, which is now at its highest level in 11 years, more on devolution, and also this knotty question of defence spending, which of course John Healey resigned as Defence Secretary over. He's now the Chancellor. The question is, has he been able to find more money than Rachel Reeves was able to do so? And as you say, that really is the kind of key question overhanging Andy Burnham. The Tories, with their attack line this evening, saying he set out all these unfunded pledges, they claim that altogether over the past week he's come up with £50 billion worth of unfunded pledges. Now, to me, that seems a bit of a theoretical number. It's rather plucked out of the air because it includes defence spending increases, the cost of a national care service, which neither of those policies have been announced yet, and also the council house building programme, which he's talked about, but we have no idea what it would look like. Labour insist all of the policies he's talked about so far have been fully funded, but clearly we know that, for example, that VAT cut on energy prices, which is going to cost £850 million, they still have to find the money to pay for that in the next budget. So I think increasingly what we're seeing is, yes, Andy Burnham's still really enjoying his kind of political honeymoon after his first week in office, but increasingly he's going to be asked questions about how he's going to deal with those financial constraints which cause so much trouble for Sir Keir Starmer.
Indeed. Amanda, thank you very much for the moment. Nancy, that is going to be the crux of the criticism around Andy Burnham is, will he come up with the figures and tell us how it's all going to be paid for, as the Conservatives have demanded?
And it's absolutely right that he should be held to account. We all know it's only 2 years since it was handed over, and we know the vast amounts of overspending, we know the huge amounts of debt, but we also know that social care is at critical levels. People all over the country, just like Andy, are having to deal with parents, grandparents who are living longer, who are getting awful illnesses and just do need care. He's right at the beginning. Every time we get a new Prime Minister, I kind of hope, OK, they've got a bit of a run at it and maybe they'll be brave enough to make the decisions now because there is an impending election. If he's ever going to do it, it has got to be now. And if anybody understands it, it's somebody who's going through it themselves. So I really do hope that he's brave. And I think, actually, if you can be brave and actual change can be seen, then people might support that. We've had so many promises and nothing's been shown, no numbers, no actual plan. So hopefully the plan comes and the numbers match.
But judging by his first week in power, it does seem as if, he's hit the ground running and he is going to do rather than just talk.
So credit where credit's due. I think Andy Burnham is a far better communicator than Sir Keir Starmer ever was. No offence, but the bar was quite low. And Burnham is a good communicator. I'm a little bit tired already of seeing these videos of getting off a train at Manchester and all of this kind of stuff. But Nancy and I were talking earlier, that's for the TikTok generation and it's getting cut through, and that's where the future votes are for Labour, so it kind of makes sense. He's had a really interesting week. It'll be interesting to see if we're going to get more announcements in week 2. But I think the Conservatives and other politicians are right to say, look, you need to show us your workings out here. Where is the money going to come from? And there's a couple of things he's not, to my understanding, not addressed yet. He's not talked about illegal migration yet, which is an issue for some people. He's not talked about what happens when the boats cross the Channel. And he's not even talked about the sheer amount of debt we have as a country. We pay £105 to £110 billion a year in debt interest alone. That's not paying off the debt. That is the interest, and that is unsustainable. So I think if you're going to go down the route of making various funding pledges and commitments, that is fine. You need to say to people, this is how we're going to pay for it, and be very clear on that. But also, at some point, he needs to acknowledge that we can't carry on borrowing at the rate we are.
I mean, some sources claiming that the Conservatives are putting it at £50 billion worth of unfunded pledges, that the Mail saying it's £96 billion tax rate to pay for Burnham's big spree.
Well, they need to build the fear because they don't want him to do well, don't they? This is how it works. If all they're throwing at him is show us your figures when he hasn't actually even claimed to lay out the figures yet, it's an interesting approach. I think what a lot of people forget in the media, we're all guilty of it, but as somebody who works in local newspapers in northern cities, things like bus fare, £2, that is a radical change in lots of people's lives. And I feel like nationally it's kind of poo-pooed and dismissed. And actually that's not a big thing. That is a big thing for people's lives. And I'm not saying that a tax raid is a good thing. But I think people are genuinely going to feel differences from things like bus. And when did we all last catch a bus? If it doesn't impact you, you don't necessarily think it's a big thing. But I think some of these changes and the independent music scene, the pubs, all these things are being really, really welcomed. But that isn't necessarily cutting through, so he's bound to be attacked on the money and has got to make it stack up.
Just for the record, I caught a bus last week.
See,
and I catch a bus every single week.
And how expensive was it?
Well, do you know what? I don't know the price because I just swipe my card. I don't know how much it costs. But if he doesn't come up with the figures this week, how damaging will that be?
Well, it is damaging, but it's a natural attack line, isn't it, for the Conservatives to go, look, you know, financially you're irresponsible. And the Conservatives, I mean, I was at, because I was hosting some panels for a client of mine at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester last year. And, you know, Sir Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, laid out this raft of kind of, you know, this is how we're going to get the economy back on track. So the Tories are pitching themselves as this kind of responsible financial political party, vote for us because, well, we'll take care of the economy, etc. That's one of their main attack lines against Labour, this idea that, you know, the economy is stuttering at the moment, and we're the party of financial prudence. So the longer that, and I'm very wary of criticising our new Prime Minister, because I've noticed on social media he actually responds to people. I noticed on X, if you say, what are you doing, Prime Minister? Andy Burnham responds. I mean, it's remarkable.
Imagine somebody listening.
A good thing.
Andy, if you're watching, I'm not being rude, but I think the longer you leave it, the more likely the noise is going to get louder from the Conservatives just going, you are a risk to our economy, how are you going to pay for it?
But the debt that you're talking about, where did that come from? Who built that up? This party is so good at economics. Let's talk about the PPE scandal. How many billions were wasted? I feel this is the fundamental problem with politics, and the reason he's feeling different and cutting through is because people are so sick of politicians who will criticise for something that they've done wrong themselves.
Yeah, I mean, in answer to your question, where does the debt come from? It comes from ongoing borrowing over the years. I mean, the pandemic is part of that. If people are watching Sky News at the moment who enjoyed furlough, that's where the money came from, right? We borrowed and borrowed and borrowed. So you know, that's why we find ourselves in the situation we are today. I think people are a bit sick and tired of politicians. I think Andy Burnham is fresh. I think he will get a bounce in the polls. I mean, if you want to, you know, talk punditry here, I think we'll have an election before the end of the year.
Oh, really?
I do.
Ooh, you've made that prediction now, Duncan.
Yeah, no,
and it's on record.
I'll go, predictions in politics is a mugs game, but I'll put some. I've just done it because I'm a mug. I'm happy to be a mug. But I think we'll see him launch a manifesto, a new manifesto at the Labour Party conference, and I think in November we'll have a general election. My caveat is if the polls start to move, and I think they will start to move for all kinds of reasons. Right,
he has got a 3% favourability at the moment. Thank you for that bold prediction. We will hold you to it.
It's OK.
Well, that story is sure to come up tomorrow morning at 8:30 on the final ever edition of Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips. Amongst Trevor's guests tomorrow is the new Defence Secretary, Wes Streeting, so do tune in for that. Now, youth protesters in India have agreed to end weeks of demonstrations after talks with the government. There were celebrations on the streets when the deal was announced after months of protests demanding the resignation of the Education Minister over the leaking of exam papers. Janavi Sen, the managing editor of The Wire, told Sky News that it's a significant development.
It's definitely good news for them. We've seen wide-scale celebrations. I'm in Delhi right now and not far from where the protest site, the center of it was, though of course it's grown across the country. So people are celebrating on the streets. They're very happy with this. Several of their demands have been met, and the one that seemed like it might be the sticking point for the government was the resignation of the education minister, because this is not a government in which any minister has ever resigned due to public pressure. This is the first. So that's been a big thing, and it really does send the message.
So absolute power of the people in this instance, and particularly, in particular, the power of Gen Z, because they've been at the forefront of these demonstrations.
It's a good news story, this, because actually if enough people, I have to be careful my language, but if enough people take to the streets and say, look, we're not putting up with this, you can make a difference. And I think it's really, really interesting what's been happening. You know, roll that into social media, and, you know, a lot of pretty angry students due to leaks coming out for their entrance exam papers. I think it's really powerful that actually they made a difference.
Yeah, and they have made history. They've not seen a resignation of an education minister like this before.
And again, I think we live in a world where people say it's not worth the time, politicians don't listen, it's not worth protest. Well, this proves the case. Yeah. And the head that they wanted has rolled. And good for them, because maybe waving a banner and making your opinions known makes a difference.
We're going to just break into some news coming into us. This is the story we brought you before about the car crashing into crowds in Berlin with several people injured. Well, this evening, police in Berlin have called off that gay pride event after several people were injured, as I said, when that car drove into the crowd. Police say the injured are receiving treatment and that they are hunting for suspects. Let's listen into them in Berlin now.
Wir sind hier mit sehr starken Polizeikräften im Einsatz. Wir suchen weiter nach verletzten Personen. Die Feuerwehr und die Hilfsorganisationen.
We haven't got a translation on this live feed, but we do have a translation on a clip that we got a little earlier on. So let's listen into that now.
Erstes Update zur Polizeilage im großen Tiergarten.
We are now at the scene with a strong police presence and paramedics from the Berlin Fire Service and other organisations. A vehicle allegedly drove into the park and hit several people, apparently injuring them. This is why there are now several patients being treated by the Berlin Fire Service in the area of the Großen Tiergarten. We are searching for possible suspects and will update when we have more information.
Well, just a little bit more information about that parade. It was actually LGBTQ plus Pride parade in the German capital, and it was just hours after the event had begun that several people were injured by that car driving into crowds. I'll just quickly get responses from Duncan and Nancy, but it's obviously a developing story that we've only just heard about moments before.
And I think most people watching Sky News at the moment will be in the similar mindset as us, which is it's about trying to hear as soon as possible what the motive may or may not be, because we've had various situations across Europe in the past. We've had it in Germany before, we've had it in France, I think we've had it in Spain, we even had it in Liverpool. Do you remember there was a guy?
Yes.
You know, so people automatically think, well, what was the cause of this? So, you know, what's the motivation behind this? Was it an accident? Was it something more sinister? Was it, I mean, the fact that it's a Pride event might suggest that it was targeted, but we don't know, it's too early to say. But I think the more we hear about these kind of events, we question rightly, and we want to know what the motive may be.
OK, we still have sight of that live news conference, and we do have a translator available to us who will be able to do that live. So we'll just bring the sound up on this live news conference.
Deshalb kann die Feuerwehr auch hier in diesen Einsatzraum so einfahren und hier ihre Rettungs- und Hilfsmaßnahmen so fahren, wie sie es tut, und wir auch so ermitteln. Nichtsdestotrotz sind wir immer noch in der Fahndungslage. Das heißt, wir fahnden nach einem oder mehreren Tatverdächtigen. Und wir sichern hier natürlich mit starken Kräften das gesamte Areal, insbesondere hier herum ab. Sie haben es auch mitbekommen, wir haben den gesamten Verkehr hier herausgenommen, um die Rettungswege freizuhalten, um den
Okay, well, police are searching for more that might be injured.
Einwandfrei und hindernisfrei zu ermöglichen. Das ist das, was wir gerade tun. Und mehr kann ich Ihnen zum jetzigen Zeitpunkt noch nicht sagen.
Herr Natt, können Sie noch mal eine Sache sagen zu der Person, die verstorben ist? Habe ich das richtig verstanden?
Okay.
Sie schwebte erst in Lebensgefahr und ist ein bisschen später verstorben.
Die Person ist lebensgefährlich verletzt worden, ist dann hier reanimiert worden.
They're asking people to stay out of the area so that they can concentrate on their work, so to keep away from the scene. There is somebody with life-threatening injuries, he's saying.
Genau ermitteln müssen, Wie ist es trotz unserer umfangreichen Zufahrtsschutzmaßnahmen, die ja dieses ganze CSD-Versammlungsgelände, die Veranstaltungsfläche umgeben hat? Wir haben hier hunderte Oktablöcke und Pythagone, tausende Absperrgitter aufgestellt. Wir haben tausende Einsatzkräfte.
He's saying that they need to work out how this happened, despite the large number of deterrents in place. They need to find out how somebody was able to drive a car into the area.
Hier in Berlin, in einer großen Stadt und insbesondere in so einer großen Grünanlage wie dem großen Tiergarten möglicherweise immer möglich, ein kleines Schlupfloch zu finden. Das scheint hier gelungen zu sein, dem oder den Tatverdächtigen. Das ist Bestandteil der Ermittlungen.
He's saying that it's they have to be honest, that it's very hard to secure the area in a large city such as Berlin, not to leave any gaps. It's quite a difficult thing to do.
Wir fahren hier mit Hochdruck, aber ich möchte jetzt hier auch nicht vor der versammelten Medienlandschaft mögliche Täter warnen oder ihnen Hinweise geben. Das ist das Wesen der Fahndung, dass wir jetzt hier möglichst wenig Details zu einer möglichen tatverdächtigen Person oder seinen Unterstützern, Helfern oder Mittätern geben. Das ist der Grund,
The police are searching for the suspect, but they don't want to give any more information than that, so as not to tip the suspect off.
Es kann durchaus sein, dass hier mehrere Personen momentan angehalten werden. Es passieren ja parallel auch noch andere allgemeine Straftaten. Da kann ich jetzt noch nicht bestätigen, dass es hier zu einer Täterfestnahme gekommen ist.
Der Tatort hat sich über eine längere Strecke erstreckt. Also 50
das hatte ich gerade gesagt. Ich habe das gerade gesagt, genau. Der ist offensichtlich in den Tiergarten eingefahren, hat dann den Ahornsteig befahren.
They can't say as yet whether anyone has been arrested. Obviously people will be stopped, but they can't say whether it's relevant to this investigation.
Und dann ist von dieser Person, zumindest von dem Fahrzeugführer, erstmal keine Spur mehr zu finden gewesen, direkt dort an der Unfallstelle, außer dass dort mehrere Personen verletzt auf dem Weg dem Ahornsteig lagen.
Sie eine Meldung über eine Machete, die verwendet wird. Können Sie das kommentieren?
Das kann ich kommentieren, aber ich kann es nicht bestätigen. Wir haben auch Hinweise erhalten von Zeugen, dass hier möglicherweise eine Person noch mit einer Stichwaffe unterwegs gewesen sein soll.
The driver left the car immediately, and there is no trace of him at the scene. Only those people that were injured.
Florian Naht, Pressesprecher der Polizei Berlin.
Aber wir müssen von Absicht ausgehen. Ja?
Das weiß ich noch nicht, das ist Bestandteil der Ermittlung. Aber wir ermitteln wirklich mit Hochdruck.
He's saying that they can't say at this point whether this was a deliberate attack or not. So that's ending that news conference from the police in Berlin. Worrying situation because they are still looking for the suspect and they are saying that they can't say yet whether anyone has been arrested. They don't want to give too much information because if the suspect is looking at this, they don't sort of want to tip him off before a potential arrest is made. But certainly a very worrying and frightening situation for people in Berlin this evening.
Yes, and I suspect the police, as we've seen with other situations in the past, will also be wondering if this person was just a lone attacker, a lone wolf, to use the expression, or whether or not there are other people who were somehow involved in what happened. So that'll be going through their minds. But you're absolutely right. There's effectively a manhunt now underway in Berlin.
And as we were saying, we have seen this. I mean, we can't speculate as to what exactly has happened and whether this is a deliberate attack. But we have seen such attacks as this in cities across Europe previously, haven't we?
And it is incredibly difficult to stop. This is a problem when you've got huge amounts of people having a great time, enjoying themselves. How do you close that off and completely contain it? It is virtually impossible. And I think sort of we're all jumping to the conclusion that this wasn't accidental, but it doesn't sound like it. And there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of people and families over there wondering if where their loved one is. And again, the emergency services are not only trying to catch somebody, they're trying to look after people who are ill. They're trying to secure an incredibly difficult crime scene to secure. It's
really difficult, isn't it? Because ultimately the car or vehicle becomes a weapon, and there's only a certain number of precautions you can put in place to keep people safe. I mean, you know, in London, in this city, we still have these barriers up, you know, around Westminster and stuff to stop people actually driving a vehicle up onto the pavement and potentially, you know, trying to get into Parliament or to run people down. And we don't want to live in a country where we end up having barriers and bollards everywhere, because that, you know, we're under threat of some kind of attack from a vehicle.
Yeah, and we heard there from police that at least one person is seriously injured. Others are injured, but they didn't give an update on their state. Just to read out the information that came in from Berlin police, and that is that they called off the LGBTQ+ Pride Parade in the German capital. Just hours after the event had begun, saying it was because several people had been injured. As I say, they didn't give details on how many people have been injured, and they called on everyone in a post on X to leave the premises of the event immediately. They didn't say what exactly had happened, only that they deployed strong police forces, and a short while later they did actually say that a car had driven into the Tiergarten Park, and that's near the route of the Pride March, hitting several people. And as I say, one person seriously injured, according to the police, but the state of others who may have been injured not described at this point. So those are the very latest pictures of the emergency services responding to this incident, which hasn't been described as deliberate at this stage. But the investigations are ongoing, and police are searching for the suspect who left the scene straight away, leaving no trace of where he was or she was heading. Several people injured, though, at the site of the incident. So that the very latest there from Berlin. We will, of course, keep you updated on this throughout the course of the evening. Just wondered if we can bring you that recent clip that we had from the police describing what they had seen.
Erstes Update zur Polizeilage im großen Tiergarten.
We are now at the scene with a strong police presence and paramedics from the Berlin Fire Service and other organisations. A vehicle allegedly drove into the park and hit several people, apparently injuring them. This is why there are now several patients being treated by the Berlin Fire Service in the area of the Großen Tiergarten. We are searching for possible suspects and will update when we have more information.
Just reading the latest on the news wires, and this is from the Reuters news agency, in which they're saying that one person has died now after that crash into the crowd in Berlin. This is according to Bild newspaper. It's a direct quote from them, suggesting the information has come from the police. We'd previously heard from the police saying that one person was seriously injured, but now, sadly, the update on that is that one person has died after that car has crashed into crowds in Berlin. And Duncan, we know that it was a Pride parade taking place in the city.
We do, and, you know, sadly, what will go through the minds of the police and other people in Berlin is whether or not this, if it turned out this was a deliberate attack, whether or not that attack was aimed at people who were taking part in Pride because of their sexual orientation. And it's a horrible thing to say, but you can't discount that at this stage. It is significant, I think, that it was a Pride celebration.
Yeah, police saying they're searching intensively for suspects. That's a direct quote. So looking perhaps for more than one person now. And we know that hundreds of thousands of people had gathered in the capital for the annual Christopher Street Day celebrations. But significant now that we're hearing from police that they are looking for suspects, plural.
Yeah, because the first thing was that the driver left the scene, but obviously the driver may not have been alone in the car. There is so much unknown at this stage. And tragically, we were talking about somebody just a few minutes ago who was seriously injured. Now it appears that somebody has died. You just do assume the worst, and we can only hope that there aren't too many victims, too many people injured, because it will have been incredibly busy and it is very difficult to defend against a car attack, like we've already said.
Bild newspaper citing a witness. They've heard from a witness saying that a white van drove into the crowd at high speed, and a man then got out of the vehicle and fled on foot. A large number of emergency service vehicles present at the scene, as we see from our pictures. but a description, the first description that we've got of the vehicle that was involved in this collision, and significant as well that it was at high speed, although police are not saying that it's a deliberate motive. They're not attributing a deliberate motive to this incident at this point. Duncan?
No, and it's too early to say. And I think, you know, if they do manage to apprehend a person who was driving the vehicle, or suspects, and they get questioned, which invariably they will do, we might start to get some sense of the motive. But it is too early at this precise moment. You know, it's tempting to speculate, given what we've heard so far. You know, the vehicle was at high speed. I think you said it's a van as well. Yeah. A van, it's a heavy vehicle. I mean, I don't want to be too crass about it, but if you're going to maximum impact and damage, that's what you do, don't you? And given the fact that it's a Pride event as well, does make you want to, well, not want to think, but think, well, look, was this deliberately targeted because of the nature of that event? But I think until people are apprehended, we should probably not speculate too much.
Yeah, and the police investigation now will focus on apprehending a individual or individuals, as they say that they are now looking for suspects. And the motive will have to be established if there is one, because the police are not saying at this point that it is a deliberate attack. But we have seen attacks of this ilk in major cities across Europe, and again, it will make people very uncertain as to their safety going about their day-to-day lives.
And this was a huge event, a very well-known event, very popular. Hundreds of thousands of people. You've said this is not just local people who live there turning up. This is a huge celebration. People have come from across the country, potentially from other countries, I would have thought, because it is so well known. So if you were going to target an event, you pick one like that, don't you, tragically? And if they're already saying suspects, again, it draws you into thinking, well, these people often don't act alone. This doesn't sound like an accident. And if they haven't arrested, if they're out looking now, aren't they? It's not happened a long time ago. So obviously the police, well, they can't speculate in the same way we can, do they?
But something interesting is happening here, because literally when we came on air, it was one person they were looking for. Now it's suspects, plural. And of course, I think if you look at similar investigations in the past from other similar incidents around the world, the police very quickly build up a picture. And one of the I suppose, the positives, if that's the right word to use, about this happening in Berlin, it's a major city, there'll be a lot of cameras around and stuff, and I think very quickly they'll be able to get a picture of what happened and who they're looking for, which is good, because hopefully these people can get caught.
Yeah. But one things that the officer that was giving the briefing said in his live briefing is that it's very difficult to police a major city and make sure that every event is safe. And he said that a car shouldn't have been able to get through to the point that it did, but it's just incredibly difficult for them to secure entire areas.
This is a lethal weapon that nearly all of us have at home. We just don't choose to use it in this way. You should be able to go to a football celebration, you should be able to go to a gay pride event, you should be able to shop at Christmas markets without this threat. But sadly, most of us now, when you're going to big events, you have got to think this through. But there are some events of such a scale that it is virtually, if not absolutely, impossible to stop a car getting through at some point. And perhaps if the things weren't in place, they did clearly, I mean, this officer was describing that it's not possible to protect it completely, but they'd clearly done a lot to protect it. And perhaps it's not as bad as it could have been. Because, as you say, we all see the bollards, we see the security. It's awful that it has to be like this.
Well, we live in different times now, don't we? And I mean, the alternative is you don't have any public events, and that way, and I use the word advise in an advisory way, but attackers, possible terrorists, therefore win, don't they? If you say we can't do an event because we can't guarantee the safety of the public, and we shouldn't be living in a country like that. And then you talk about the Christmas markets. You know, there has been a big shift over the last several years, for understandable reasons, because they've also been targets in the past, that you see armed police walking around Christmas markets. You know, you've got guys and girls with big machine guns, and they're there because, sadly, there are people in this country and other countries around the world who would see that as a justified target, for whatever reason, you know, ideological reason, I don't know. But the alternative is we just go, well, we can't have these events anymore. And that way, terrorism wins, right?
Yeah, if it is terrorism, but yes, we haven't had that confirmed by the police in Germany. They are keeping all options open in terms of motive and who has done this, whether it's an individual or several individuals. But just to bring people up to date who have just joined us, there's a major police operation underway tonight in Berlin after a vehicle was driven into crowds at the LGBTQ+ Pride parade in the German capital in Berlin. Just hours after the event begun, several people injured. That has now been updated. Sadly, one person has died after the incident. Police say on the social media platform X that they're responding with emergency services to the incident in the city's central Tiergarten Park, and that's close to the Brandenburg Gate, where that vehicle struck multiple people. They say we're searching intensively for suspects and that hundreds of thousands of people had gathered in the German capital for the annual Christopher Street Day celebrations. That's what they're called, one of Europe's largest pride events, and festivities taking place there on an annual basis. Emergency services are treating the injured at the scene, but the number and severity of those injured hasn't been immediately clear to emergency services. You are watching the live shots of emergency services at the scene following that vehicle, which has been described in Bild newspaper as a white van. That's been described by a witness as a white van driving into the crowd at high speed. The witness then saw a man get out of the van and flee on foot. And that is the only eyewitness account that we have thus far. But police saying to individuals in Berlin this evening to stay away from the scene so that they may carry out their investigations. But they are launching a major police operation searching for a suspect, potentially several suspects involved in this incident, but at this point not able to assign a motive to what has happened this evening in Berlin. But Nancy, as we say, extremely worrying for those in the city this evening. Hundreds of thousands were at this parade, and there will be those whose relatives were there and they simply don't know if they're safe tonight.
No, and you're waiting for that call, you're waiting for that text, and it's difficult for police, isn't it? Because there will be people who've been taken to hospital and they genuinely don't know how well they are. I mean, a car can injure lots and lots of people that looks like a minor injury and it turns out it's not. So this is, it's ongoing. It has only happened very recently. Police have got to get on top of it. The hospitals have got to be able to check people out. And it must just be awful. Anybody who knows somebody who's gone there, and an awful lot of people across Germany, but wider, will know somebody who's gone there to celebrate, to have a great time. And this is just the worst possible outcome.
Yeah, and Duncan, just to confirm that coming in again, that one person has now died as a result of the crash.
Yes, I mean, sadly, when we cover stories like this, and we've seen it in the past, people do get taken to medical facilities and hospitals, and then slowly we get the really tragic picture that people who were injured were seriously injured and have lost their lives. And then the hospitals and medical authorities start to release that information. So let's hope there are no more fatalities. But as we've seen in the past, over the course of several hours after an incident like this, more and more information gets released. And it can turn out that a number of people have lost their lives. But let's hope that's not the case.
Yeah, and several people, no doubt, will be in hospital at this point. We would be expecting some sort of helpline to be established pretty quickly so that relatives or people who believe that they've got loved ones that might have been at the parade can call to get information. But as we say, extremely worrying time. Those crowds, seemingly looking at our live shots, have been dispersed. The parade was cancelled, and where we were just seeing one person there who possibly was at the parade. I don't know if we can hear from them. Right, we've lost our translator, so we can't bring you what he's saying in English. But these are the latest pictures of emergency services at the scene in Berlin, where, as you can see on screen, one person has lost their life after a vehicle described as a white van was driven into crowds at this Pride parade in Berlin, in the German capital. Several injured, one person lost their lives. The police have not been able to assign a motive to this incident, but are saying that they are searching for a suspect, potentially suspects in this case. The white van was seen by a witness to drive into the crowds. The driver of the vehicle fled on foot and left the car, but that's as much as police can tell us. Let's now get a translation on that potential witness. Let's listen into what he's had to say.
Heute das wiedererleben zu müssen, das ist einfach schockierend, das schockiert mich selber auch und das nimmt mich auch sehr mit. Es ist ein schwarzer Tag für die Community und ja, wir müssen schauen, wie wir da irgendwie wieder rauskommen. Aber ich glaube, der CSD in Berlin wird nicht mehr der CSD sein, wie er
He's saying this is a dark day for the community.
Und ja, es lässt einfach, also es schockiert mich einfach. Mir fehlen auch die Worte, weil ich hätte nie gedacht, dass ich sowas mehr erleben muss. Das war immer so die schlimmste.
This is really shocking me. I can't find the words.
Wenn irgendwann mal sowas auf dem CSD passiert, das hätte ich mir nie vorstellen können. Heute ist es passiert und das lässt mich einfach fassungslos zurück.
Man weiß jetzt noch gar nicht, was die genauen
I could never have imagined something like this happening at the Christopher Street Day Parade.
Es ist schon meine schlimmste Befürchtung. Wir haben ja auch von dem Pressesprecher gehört, dass halt ein Auto halt in die Tiergarten reingefahren ist. Und dass es halt 15 Verletzte gibt, leider auch einen Toten. Und ich kann mir nicht vorstellen, dass es Absicht gewesen ist. Also warum sollte man Absicht die Menschen messen? Ich glaube schon, dass jemand war, der einen Hass auf die Community hat, der
I can't imagine that this is on purpose. Why would you do that?
Zu treffen im Herzen, denn der CSD ist ein Tag in der Stadt, wo wir so sein können, wie wir wollen.
They wanted to hit us in our heart.
Es tut allen weh und das ist schwierig.
Sag mir bitte noch einmal deinen Namen und für welches Pressemedium du arbeitest und das alles?
Genau, also ich bin Julian Mietig, also Julian, M-I-E-T-H-I-G, arbeite für Queer-Format, also Queer und dann Queer-Mat und bin im Vorstand vom CSD Sachsen-Anhalt. Gerne, gerne.
OK, so we heard there, we brought you that translation from a witness who said that this is a dark day for the community. This is really shocking me. I can't find the words he said. I could never have imagined something like this happening. This is my worst nightmare. I can't imagine. Why would you do that? He said that he couldn't imagine that this was deliberate. And then he went on to say at the end that they wanted to hit us in our hearts. So that witness there really believing that the community, the LGBTQ+ community, was being deliberately targeted. That, obviously, speculation at the moment because the police haven't confirmed any motive, but from somebody who was there speaking for his community, he definitely believes that they were targeted.
And it's understandable that he takes that view. Look, you know, Berlin is a very liberal city. It has a very big LGBTQ+ community. This was a moment of annual celebration, and I think it's perfectly understandable that someone who was there would conclude that it was a deliberate attack because of the nature of that kind of event.
Yeah, we're just hearing an update on Newswires that many people have been injured after that vehicle apparently charged into the crowd at the event. There are multiple cases of people with life-threatening injuries. This is coming from the city's police. Nancy, we know that one person has died. Now hearing that a number do have life-threatening injuries.
And when it's an incident of this scale, they've possibly all gone to different hospitals. This is actually really difficult to coordinate, and the priority must be trying to save people's lives, must be trying to treat the injured, must be trying to get in touch with the families. So while they are obviously trying to update the media and all the concerned people who were there, all the families we've already talked about who don't know whether their loved ones are alive or dead, they have got to focus on the victims, do what they can to catch the suspects. This is a really tough job. These kind of situations are always really difficult to deal with, and you can only hope that the numbers don't go up, but you kind of get the sickening feeling when this kind of thing happens again and again.
Well, it's not just life-threatening injuries, is it? It's life-changing injuries as well. You know, you could be there and you could survive the event, but you might be injured in a way that completely changes your life forever, and that's the other really sad aspect of this. I mean, obviously, losing a loved one in an incident like this is awful. It's incredibly traumatic. You can still survive an incident like this, and your life will never be the same again.
And all the people who went to celebrate who weren't injured, but as
survivor's guilt,
just
they call
said,
it.
But he just kind of said, I can't believe they would target this, and then he's gone straight from that to we obviously were targeted, and that feeling that somebody out there could possibly have such hatred that they would do this is changes.
You just can't
everybody.
begin to imagine if you're a parent of someone who was there. I think we're all parents around this table. You know, you're on your phone, you're trying to message, you're trying to WhatsApp your son or your daughter because you knew they were going to be at an event. The networks, the mobile phone networks, get overloaded. You know, in some cases, I'm not saying this is happening in Berlin, but the police try and shut down the networks just in case. You know, they're looking for people, or that they might be worried that a mobile phone device might be used to trigger some other kind of attack or whatever. But you're there as a parent just thinking, I can't reach my child, you know, my loved one. That's awful.
Yeah, terrible. It is now just a minute past 11, and just to bring people up to date who may have just joined us, one person has died and several others are seriously injured after a van drove into crowds in Berlin at the annual Pride March, the Christopher Street Day parade in Berlin. The parade was called off following the incident. This is in Berlin's Tiergarten district. And as I say, several people seriously injured and one person has died. We've heard from the police who say that they need to figure out how this happened. And speaking honestly, he said it's very, very hard to police these types of events in major cities. They are now searching for a suspect or possible suspects, but say that a vehicle should never have got into that area to carry out such an attack if it is found to be an attack. They can't say as yet whether people have been arrested, but they do know that the driver of the car immediately fled the scene, leaving no trace. So they are hunting for that driver and possibly any accomplices, which that hasn't been established as yet, but they are open to the fact that there may have been other people involved in this incident. The driver fled, and at the scene were only the injured people left. Several seriously injured with life-threatening injuries in hospital, and one person, as I say, has sadly lost their lives. We heard from one witness who was at the parade. He said that it's a dark day for the community. This is really shocking. I can't find the words. He said, I could never have imagined anything like this happening. This is my worst nightmare. I can't imagine. Why would you do that? And he then said they wanted to hit us in our hearts. So certainly that one witness believing that it was a targeted attack, Nancy.
And when the police say that the van got to an area that they should have never been able to get to, it doesn't sound like an accidental or swerved off a road. It sounds very deliberate. They can't say, presumably until they've caught whoever it was and done the investigation, we don't know what information they've got, but they've got an awful lot of work ahead of them before they can confirm anything, but I think that is the whole point. They've deliberately attacked people who've done absolutely nothing wrong. A really joyous celebration, and that is trying to put fear into people's hearts. And to some extent, you do succeed at that, because we're all sat here going, this is an absolutely terrible thing, and I don't think for 1 minute it will impact next year's. You hope people come out stronger, but it makes you think twice, doesn't it?
And sadly, Duncan, this is a situation that has happened before in major cities across Europe. In Germany itself, we've had the Christmas markets that were attacked. So sadly, it is not a situation that we are unaccustomed to.
No, and our usual caveats apply. We don't know the motives behind this attacker or indeed attackers, but I think if it does turn out to be someone who deliberately targeted this event because of the nature of this event, then I think it's fair to say that the reason behind that is to attack a certain way of life and the Western way of life. And we can't allow people to have the kind of impact that potentially they might have by doing this kind of stuff, you know? We can't. We've got to carry on living our lives. It's a pride event. We celebrate that in various European cities around the world, rightly so. We can't not have these events just because they potentially might become some kind of target for someone or a group of people. We can't.
Yeah, and if it is proven to be some sort of terrorist attack, the resolve to not be coward is really what is so important, that, as you say, people have to continue living their lives. But in the immediate aftermath, terror is really going to be what many people will be feeling.
Tens of thousands of them who were on the streets, who were there for a celebration that really didn't get much chance to start. They had to cancel the whole parade. But I think this is a community, if it turns out that it was targeted because the type of event it was, this is a community that has constantly been under attack for as long as any of us can remember. Yeah. Not necessarily in a way that's quite so brutal and cost lives, but the resolve will be there, and they will come back and they will seize the moment, because tragically you've got to. And to remember the people who are seriously injured or who have died, it's really important that that's done.
Just to update on the police statement, again, they're reiterating that a vehicle is believed to have charged into a crowd at Berlin's Pride celebrations. The police adding that a manhunt is underway for a possible perpetrator or perpetrators. They've said on social media that they're responding with emergency services to this incident in the city's central Tiergarten Park, that is close to the Brandenburg Gate, where the vehicle struck multiple people, several of those seriously injured, life-threatening injuries in hospital. And as I say, one person has died. Police say we're searching intensively for suspects. And we know that this parade, there were hundreds of thousands of people who'd gathered for this Christopher Street Day celebration. It is actually one of Europe's largest Pride events. That was cancelled as soon as this incident occurred. People were told to leave the scene. Also, police asked other people away from the celebrations, from the parade, not to come to the area so that they can carry out their investigations unhindered. The tabloid newspaper Bild, they have quoted a witness describing that vehicle as a white van driving into the crowd at high speed. The witness then saw a man get out of the van and flee the scene on foot. A large number of emergency service vehicles were present, and as you can see from our live pictures, are still present at the scene. The investigations begin tonight, but primary in the minds of police officers is finding the suspect or suspects. One individual was seen running from the car, but police really now, tonight, have to find out who carried out this attack, if it is an attack and what has happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's vitally important that we understand what the motive is for all kinds of reasons. If and, you know, usual, as I keep saying, usual caveats, we don't know and we shouldn't speculate too much, but it is significant this was a Pride event, I believe. If it turns out that was the reason for the attack, it has ramifications in this country. You know, next weekend, Brighton has its Pride event. Now, it's one of the UK's biggest Pride events outside of London. And there'll be organisers there if it does turn out that the reason this attack took place in Berlin was because it was a Pride event. You're going to have organisers thinking, well, is that something we need to certainly be aware of? Do we need to change our plans? So the ramifications are not just about, you know, what's happening in Berlin tonight, but potentially elsewhere.
And the police in Berlin saying that they did have measures in place to secure this event, but the suspect breached them, and it's very difficult for them to police events of this magnitude, of this size, with hundreds of thousands of people in Berlin, a busy city. Can they truly keep them all safe?
I'm not sure you ever can. It feels like this kind of attack, for whatever reason, and we've seen various different reasons over the years, but whether you're targeting people who are shopping, whether you're targeting people who are celebrating the football or any type of community that's come together, how can you possibly keep all those people safe? Even if they've got to get there, they don't magically appear, even if you can contain them within some sort of security. And you've talked about now, we all go to the Christmas markets and you see the armed police, but not actually enough. You couldn't possibly have enough to stop a car or vehicle if it wanted to get in there. And it's very easy to get hold of a car. It just falls into the wrong person's hands, and there you are, another tragedy. And it's always a really nice event that people have gone to celebrate, and people are high and relaxed and possibly not imagining that this type of thing could happen. And again it seems to happen.
And you're right. I mean, what should happen, and will happen to a degree, is this will not stop events like this happening in Berlin, because people will come back stronger. But there will be a group of people who will go, do you know what? I just don't think it's a safe thing to do anymore. And that, you know, once we find out the reason behind this, what appears to be some kind of attack, you could say that actually they've got what they've wanted, because people are changing their lives because they're fearful for their safety.
Well, the parade's been cancelled.
Yes.
Yeah.
You were mentioning the Pride event to take place in Brighton.
Next weekend, yeah.
Yes, and you will be wondering now whether that will go ahead. Obviously, we do not know the motive behind this, but will they now be seriously considering the security that they've got in place for those that want to go to that event in Brighton?
Well, exactly, and it's an understandable consideration and concern to have. And again, if it turns out that the fact that this particular event was targeted because it was a Pride event, then if you're organising the Brighton one, for example, it has to go through your mind, well, you know, do we need to take extra precautions? What do we do? I mean, ultimately, you know, Brighton and Hove is a city, right? Berlin is a city. You can't lock down an entire city. You can't make it work. It's unfeasible. And you shouldn't have to either. So once again, we hope in the next few hours we get confirmation, or let's hope people get apprehended, but we actually understand the motive behind this. As it looks, from the information, the facts we have to hand, you know, so far, that vehicle shouldn't have been there, and the person who was driving it ran away. So it doesn't look like an accident.
Yeah. So the intensive manhunt is underway, as police have described. Tonight, they've urged people, as I've said, to avoid the area so they can continue their investigations. The injured are being treated by emergency services near Tiergarten Park, and that's where the incident took place at the annual Pride event, the Christopher Street Day parade, as it's called. The police believe that the vehicle entered the Tiergarten Park and hit several people and injured them. That was their initial post on social media. We know that several of those people do have life-threatening injuries, and since that post, the initial post from police, one person has sadly died from their injuries. We're looking at the live pictures of emergency services at the scene. One person has been seen entering an ambulance on a stretcher. Previously seen that, but those are the pictures of emergency services at the scene, and the investigation obviously starts from this point. The manhunt is underway to try and find the person who was driving that vehicle, who fled on foot. You can see a number of police officers, rescue tents from the fire department. They've been deployed to the area, but the scene much earlier on would have been of huge crowds, as you say, Nancy, enjoying themselves there for a pride parade in high spirits and looking forward to a very social event with hundreds of thousands of people attending, potentially from across Europe and the world. It's one of the largest in Europe. And this is how their evening is ending.
Yeah, the worst possible way. And I mean, all we know now is that one person is dead and other people are potentially fighting for their lives. A lot of people have been injured. But it is worth remembering that I think we would have possibly had a very similar discussion when the similar attack happened in Liverpool. And actually it turned out it wasn't an attack on a way of life. And we just don't actually know anything now. And possibly the police don't even know anything now. There's a whole process to go through. And all we can really do is hope that the numbers of injured and the numbers of dead don't increase, because it's dark. You can see it's night time there. What an incredibly difficult job. They've had to clear the area of hundreds of thousands of people, which on its own is quite a task. They've got a really difficult challenge ahead. We will just have to wait and see how it develops.
Yeah, and as you say, we mustn't speculate. Police have said that they are keeping an open mind as to whether there even is a motive. I mean, there are potential other explanations, as you point out, with Liverpool, what happened there. But from the eyewitness, if we can believe what the eyewitnesses had to say, the vehicle, the white van, was driven at speed into the crowd. At speed, and from what we've also heard in the last hour or so, in an area where vehicles shouldn't have been, which I think is significant, and without being too brutal about it, if it was an accident, why would you run away if you were the driver? I think those are fair questions to ask, but we wait and see, you know, if the police can establish a motive. But certainly that poor eyewitness was very clear. He believed that the event was attacked because it was an LGBTQ event. Yeah. We haven't had any update about helpline or any service for people to contact to find out about whether loved ones have been caught up in this event tonight, which you would imagine that would be available at this point, because, as we say, hundreds of thousands of people were in attendance. There will be people tonight who perhaps don't know about the whereabouts of their loved ones who attended the parade. Yeah, there will be lots of them. Presumably, we can only hope that they're working at it behind the scenes and that these numbers will be available. But it's late at night and they are working possibly to save lives in the hospitals across Berlin. So I guess there is a priority list. And they've also got to contact the family of at least one person to break the news to them that they've died. We don't even know if they are from Berlin. They don't even necessarily have to have come from Germany. So hopefully a number is available soon. Hopefully the mobile lines aren't overwhelmed, like you say. Most people have been able to get in touch, but the worst possible news is heading towards at least one family tonight. Yeah, absolutely. And we've said previously, haven't we, that sadly this type of situation isn't one that we're unaccustomed to in Europe now. We've had examples of Christmas markets where this has happened, other cities across Europe where cars have been used as weapons, if that is the case in this instance. But certainly large public gatherings now, places that are fraught with fear for people. Yeah, and again, it comes back to what the motives might be, but if you want to try and get people to change their way of life, and if you want to get people to live in fear, events like this, attacks like this, have an impact. I mean, I'm old enough to remember, and I won't suggest you are, Nancy, but I'm old enough to remember the 1970s and 1980s when the IRA was bombing the British mainland. And, you know, my parents at the time were just like, well, we don't go to London.
We don't go to London because London's unsafe. And that was the kind of fear that, in that particular case, a terrorist organisation wanted people of the country to feel, which is you can't go about your normal business. And they were successful on that. Now, again, we don't know the cause of this, but if this attack is designed to try and change people's behaviour and how they live their lives, and that turns out to be the motive for whatever reason, ideologically or otherwise, then it's going to be successful, isn't it? Because there will be people who just think, I don't want to take the risk of going to events like that.
But sometimes it does embolden people to say the complete opposite, that we will not be coward and we will continue to live our lives as we always have done, and we won't be coward, because this is exactly what the perpetrators, if it is decided that it is some form of terrorism, this is exactly what they want. So we're going to live our lives in defiance.
And I think, actually, regardless of what has caused this, regardless of the motive, it crosses all our minds when you go to a big event that this happens, not on a hugely regular basis, but there's plenty that we can all mention, and it does cross your mind. But also, it doesn't stop us. There's been terrible things happen at football matches. I still go to football matches. Quite a few other people do. It wasn't just London that was hit. I mean, Manchester,
no, that's
people
true.
don't avoid Manchester. I know a lot of people who won't go to London now because of all the talk about all the people robbing the mobile phones and things. And it is something that, as a society, we do bounce back from. And I suspect in Brighton next week they will do something to mark this and to try and bring the community together and say, actually, we're all in this together, regardless of what the motive was. They will do the right thing.
Well, it's the ultimate reaction, isn't it? Defiance. You know, you did this, but it's not making any difference whatsoever. We're here and we're stronger than ever.
OK, we're going to take a break at this point, but obviously we'll keep you updated on the situation in Berlin tonight after a vehicle has driven into crowds there at the Pride parade. One person has died, several have life-threatening injuries. We'll keep you updated after the break.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
On your screen at the moment, the live pictures from Berlin after a vehicle has driven into crowds at the annual Pride Parade in Berlin. This is at Tiergarten Park, where hundreds of thousands of people had been gathered for the celebrations. One person, sadly, has died following their injuries, and police say that several others are in a life-threatening condition. Emergency services, as you see on screen, responding to that incident in Tiergarten Park, close to the Brandenburg Gate, where police have confirmed that a white vehicle appeared to strike multiple people, many injured with life-threatening injuries, and one person, as I say, has died. We're looking for the police to provide an update shortly. We have previously heard from them in which they said that a vehicle should never have been in that area of the city within the Pride celebration, but it is extremely difficult to entirely secure such an event in a busy city, hundreds of thousands of people converging for the Pride Parade. A manhunt is underway this evening. We haven't actually had confirmation whether it is a man or a woman, but that's the terminology that the police have used. They've also said that a suspect is in their sights. They are searching for the suspect that drove the car, and it might possibly be suspects, plural. They haven't confirmed that either, but they are continuing their search for whoever was driving that vehicle this evening, and they've asked people to stay away from the area as they continue their investigations this evening. We haven't had any helpline numbers put out for those who may be fearful for any relatives who would have attended the event, the Pride March this evening. As I say, we're looking for an update from the police, and we'll bring that to you as soon as it comes into us. So let's take you through the papers now. Obviously, the incident in Berlin, too late to have made any of the papers, so they're still looking at the wildfires. So the wildfires in Europe lead in the Observer with the headline, Baptism of Fire. The paper reports that Bordeaux has opened emergency shelters for residents fleeing the city's western suburbs. The fires are also on the front of the Sunday People, with a picture of a playground with huge plumes of some in the background, and the headline, Run for Your Lives. Holiday families escape France fires horror. The Sunday Mirror leads on an article written for the paper by Andy Burnham, in which he says Britain should be a country where nobody is written off. The Sunday Express carries a warning from Reform UK's Robert Jenrick for the Prime Minister not to, quote, hammer families with an £18 billion death tax. The PM's plans also feature on the front of the Mail on Sunday, with the paper reporting claims from the Tories that Burnham's policy pledges will cost families an extra £4,300 a year. The Sunday Times reports that Andy Burnham will give mayors new spending freedoms under his devolution plan. Streeting in bid to win back Trump, reads the headline in the Sunday Telegraph, with the paper reporting that the new Defence Secretary is promising to modernise the armed forces and has invited his US counterpart, Pete Hegseth, to a summit in the UK. The Sun on Sunday has an exclusive report claiming that police are hunting for migrants who are said to have fled to Britain on a boat after stabbing a man to death on a French beach. The Star reports that a man jailed for plotting to kill Holly Willoughby has been blocked from attending his mother's funeral. So let's start with the politics and the front page of the Mirror. No one should be written off. This direct quote from the Prime Minister, Duncan.
Yeah, so Andy Burnham was very much doubling down, I think, on his first week as Premier, as Prime Minister. He's written for the Mirror, really honing that message again, echoing that message, which is no matter where you are in the United Kingdom, there is hope. Is it hope in every postcode? Have I got that right? Is that what he said?
Power in every postcode, I think, was the actual quote.
And it is a very powerful message, and it's really interesting, Nancy, what you said earlier. I mean, you know, I live in a part of the world which is relatively rural. Buses aren't great. You rightly made the point earlier that, you know, having the £2 bus fare cap is significant in your part of the world. A lot of people use the bus. And it's it's strengthening that message about the cost of living, and this guy who's our Prime Minister kind of going, I get it, I know what makes a real difference. So this piece in the Mirror is just really making the point that no matter where you are, I will be here for you. I think that there is a little bit of a danger, and I'm not going to go both barrels on this because it's still only after 1 week, that this whole number 10 North thing, it will tire quite quickly, I think, because I was listening to...
South.
Sorry?
In the south.
Well, in Scotland, I was going to say. And I'll tell you why, because I was listening to the Sky, your political podcast, and Ruth Davidson is on there, who's the former leader of the Scottish Conservatives. And she was like, and I thought she made a very good point. She was just like, I think Andy Burnham's forgotten about Scotland. So I think there is a bit of a danger if he keeps banging on, don't want to upset anyone, about Manchester all of the time. There are people just going, oi, what about us up here? But this is a core message, I think, of his premiership. And I think, as we say in the world of politics and communications, it is landing well in the way that Keir Starmer couldn't get across.
Yeah, I have heard that criticism that the North isn't just Manchester. There are
go a bit further
areas
up.
further north than Manchester. And your point to whether this is actually a gimmick and one that you might get tired of. I mean, do you agree with that, Nancy?
Firstly, I would be publicly flogged if I go back to Sheffield and let you believe that buses are good there because they're I suspect that's true everywhere. I actually think it's really refreshing, and I think it's not necessarily about Manchester. The point is, for too long, Westminster and a very small area of the country has had all the power. And that's what's wrong with it. It's actually really unusual. Other countries across Europe and the world don't contain all the money and all the power and all the decisions in a very small area. So while it's easy to say he's going on and on about Manchester, he was mayor of Manchester fairly quite recently. Is that actually his message? Yes, so the number 10 of the North happens to be in Manchester. But I think it's a very easy sort of stick to beating with, oh, it's to Manchester. It hasn't happened to other prime ministers. And I actually think spreading out the power is a good thing for everybody. And he's not saying, I'm just going to give it to Manchester. You're right, he's had a week, and maybe he hasn't addressed issues in Wales or Scotland yet. But, I mean, 5 days isn't...
No, that's why I said I wouldn't give him both barrels. I'm just kind of thinking, if you're living in Truro at the moment in Cornwall, you're probably going, what about me?
Well, absolutely, but I don't think they're saying, well, forget about us because it's OK, we don't mind it all being in Westminster. The issue is to spread it out. And actually, the devolution plans aren't just about Manchester at all.
And that is a fair point. And, I mean, this does feed into his devolution strategy, which is interesting. I mean, I remain to be convinced that devolution is going to be a good thing. You've got it in Yorkshire, haven't you? I live in West Sussex. They're, excuse my language, still faffing around about how to carve up West Sussex County Council and East Sussex County Council.
You said faffing there.
It's all right. I didn't say anything else.
Had me worried for a second.
Well, you can trust me, mostly. I remain, and I think other people who have not experienced it remain unconvinced that this is going to be good locally. What does it mean? Will it cost us more money or whatever? And if you're going to be a little bit picky, you can point to Wales, for example, where we've had devolution for, 25 years? 30 years, and look at the state of the NHS under Labour in Wales. It's not great. So I think there are concerns about it, but I will come back and say one more positive thing, because it's only been a week. If anyone can actually articulate the message that devolution can work, it's Andy Burnham, because he is a very good communicator.
And let's just flip it. So how has centralisation worked down there? NHS great, is it? Is public services great? Your buses are wonderful. I mean, we've tried this for a very long time, and the country is on its
just said a
knees.
few moments ago that buses in Sheffield aren't particularly
No, they're
good.
about to come back into public ownership. It hasn't happened yet.
And how's Sheffield run in terms of devolution?
So it hasn't got control of public buses, but it's coming back. Right. But from next year, children will be free on buses, which is a massive thing. Nothing's excited my 14-year-old more. And also, so he came to me and said, did you see what Andy Burnham said on TikTok? I was like, No,
Oh, really?
but this is the
That's
first time
interesting.
he's ever... I mean, they're laughing about the Christmas stuff, but you're not telling me that's not getting through somehow.
You've changed my mind on something this evening. When we were putting together what we're talking about now earlier, you rightly said that, you know, you explained about your child talking about Andy Burnham on TikTok. And I came waddling into this studio earlier, just I'm so bored of Andy Burnham doing his videos. But the point is, if 14-year-olds... you know, who will, in a couple of years' time, get the vote when they turn 16, are actually showing an interest in our current Prime Minister, that is really significant stuff.
And had that generation been mobilised, we wouldn't have had Brexit. Would reform be so strong if... these are the questions, aren't they? Change the vote, the power is moving.
What I think is really interesting about how Burnham's doing this, he's parking his tanks on Nigel Farage's lawn in some ways, not with policies, but with the tactics, the social media stuff he's doing. You know, we had 48 hours ago, we had Burnham in a pub, you know, with his Chancellor, John Healey, the battle of the bar-time snacks, from pork scratchings to scampi fries. You know, that is proper Farage territory.
Yeah, that is classic Farage, isn't it?
Well,
let's try and get a couple more papers in to the Express. And talking of reform, Robert Jenrick is saying don't hammer families with £18 billion death tax. Take us into this story, Duncan.
Well, the headline says it all. The term death tax is quite emotional, isn't it? You know, I think if there's some reality coming down the tracks. If we want good social care in this country, it has to be paid for. And how do you pay for it? You know, do you have, as Bobby J, Mr. Jenrick would well, that's what he called himself, would class it as, you know, as a death tax to fund the social care crisis? That's one way of doing it. I think there is a mindset, understandably and rightly so, in this country. If you've been working all your life and you've now retired, you take the view that you've paid in all your life, so you shouldn't have to sell your property to fund your social care later in life and stuff. But that money was not... You don't have a pot with your name on that you can then use when you retire or you need social care. That money's already been spent. We've got an older generation living for longer. It is getting bigger. We are heading towards a social care crisis. Whether or not whacking up inheritance tax or introducing some other kind of levy is a fair and right way of doing it, I don't know, is the honest answer. But when it comes to selling it to voters, that is the biggest challenge, because essentially you're saying you're going to have to give up something here.
Indeed. Jenrick saying that he's against dragging 650,000 hard-working pensioners into paying a death tax each year. Everyone wants to fix social care, but an £18 billion death tax is emphatically not the answer. He doesn't actually go on to say what the answer is.
Well, whichever party is representing this week or this month, has he ever come up with the plans? And it's absolutely fine to attack, but isn't this what Andy Burnham's trying to move away from, and which is the very reason why people are so sick of politics? Actually, this is a serious thing. Things like the NHS, social care, should actually politicians put their heads together and go, this is a real problem. People are dying without care. Shall we actually try and solve it? And I mean, surely Robert Jenrick's run out. You should see the memes on TikTok about that.
Well, I'll get on my TikTok later. All I would say is, and I think stuff like this doesn't help from Robert Jenrick. I mean, I'm not a fan of him as a politician for whatever party, for all kinds of reasons. But what I find really disheartening about this is, if you want to be a serious party of government, it's all well and good. You can slag off a proposal that maybe Andy Burnham's going to roll out or whatever, but you give me your solution, and then I can decide whether or not what you're promising to do or your answer to a challenge or a problem can actually stack up and can actually work. And I would have a lot more respect for Robert Jenrick, and indeed any political party, if they want to say to someone, I don't like it, it's terrible, OK, well, tell me what you're going to do about it.
Yeah. When we read in the Sunday People that Andy Burnham's father has Alzheimer's, does that give a different tint on his want to solve social care? Does it make him seem more genuine to the public, do you think?
I think it gives us an understanding that he gets it, he's living through it. And we've all been touched by it, but it is absolutely awful. And not to be able to get the support you need. When families are brought to their knees by this, it is just the worst awful way to die. And to see people and to know it runs down families and it's hereditary and all these things, actually, to know that somebody's going through that and they have the power to make a difference, and perhaps they've got the bravery to make a difference, because it's very easy to say it's not good enough and to throw stones from the sidelines. But actually, we haven't seen any politicians say, well, maybe we do have to put our hands in our pockets if we seriously want to change this.
Yeah. To the Mail, sticking with Andy Burnham and more criticism of him, the Tories are saying that all of the pledges that have been made this week are not funded, they've not been costed, and he's going to come a cropper unless he comes up with the figures. Where is the money coming from? That's the question they're asking.
It is, and it's a fair question. And if you're Andy Burnham or one of his advisors, what you need to do is shut down this kind of question mark over how all of this stuff is going to be paid for, because if you're a rival political party, namely the Conservatives with this Mail on Sunday story, that is a really quite heavy attack line to use against Andy Burnham. We saw last week a number of pledges, some of which he said, some of which we learned were going to be funded and where it's going to come from, but it unravelled quite quickly. You had Darren Jones, who was Keir Starmer's right-hand man, you know, openly on social media. I think it was the VAT, wasn't it, off electricity bills, and it was like, well, we're going to take the money that we save from scrapping digital ID. And Darren Jones took to social media and just said, well, that was unfunded. The money we were going to use to make digital ID happen was coming from savings from other government departments, which were never identified. So you had a very early example there of open warfare within the Labour Party. Very unhelpful
from Darren Jones there.
But also, I mean, politics to one side, because obviously he was a loyalist to Starmer, right to call it out, because you can't be... For far too long, we have had politicians right across the board going, oh, we're going to do this, and they've not been properly challenged enough with the question of how are you going to pay for it? And that question has never been more important these days.
And if he can't answer that question this week with hard figures and facts, how damaging do you think that will be to him?
I think if it's not this week, I don't think it's particularly damaging, but he has got to stand up and do this at some point, because we've had so many election promises, so many hospitals that are going to be built, so much money that's going to be saved by coming out of the EU, and we've not seen any of it materialise, so something needs to be done. I mean, you've got Rotherham's finest in number 11. What more could you ask for?
Let's stay with politics and Andy Burnham. Most of the front pages are to do with him in one way or another. And the Telegraph talking about West Streeting and what sort of relationship this administration will have with the US administration, in particular Donald Trump. Will he be able to win him back? I don't know if he ever was necessarily 100% on our side.
I don't think you can ever win with Donald Trump, can you? Because he's so unpredictable, and you know, you wake up the next day and you find that, and this happened to Keir Starmer. You know, Keir Starmer thought he got things on a quite good level with Donald Trump, and he'd wake up the next day and Trump at 4 o'clock in the morning on Social Truth on his social media platform had gone a bit nuts and just posted something, and like, you know, Starmer was like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? So I don't think we're going to see a change of Trump's behaviour. But this is very interesting. I mean, you know, defence rightly is in their headlines. We have not funded defence properly as a country for decades. Successive governments, because again, it's not normally a vote winner, is it? You know, whilst I get excited about warships, most people were like, yeah, well, I'd rather have a more functioning NHS, and I get it. However, the world has changed. We've seen it with Ukraine. We've seen it with the conflict with Iran. Our defence has been left wanting, and Wes Streeting has a bit of a job to do here. Now, if he's able to call in a favour from former Defence Secretary, now Chancellor John Healey, I'm still trying to keep up with him, you know, and can actually get more money for defence, I think that'll put him in Trump's good books. I mean, the target here is 3.5% of GDP by 2035, which is what most NATO allies have agreed to do. I mean, that is, I mean, I can't work it out off the top of my head, but that is a serious amount of money. But we need it. We live in a very unstable place. And I think if you want to get into Trump's good books, you kind of go, well, we listen to you, Donald. You know, we've increased our spending, our NATO commitments and our defence spending.
Nancy, what are the chances of repairing the, I won't say special relationship, but the previous relationship, which was quite good?
I think they're probably fairly good, but that is the whole point. Actually, every leader across the world wants to be in his good books, but the next minute you're thrown out. So I think West Streeting's got as big a challenge as anybody. I don't think Andy Burnham and Donald Trump are natural bedfellows, but I mean, as we know, America has so much power, you have no choice. If they stand strong and don't sort of look like they're giving in too much to Trump. I think that will actually probably do their ratings here a whole power of good.
OK, let's pause the papers there and just remind you of our breaking news story at the top of the hour. News conference on at the moment. We don't have a translation for that news conference in Berlin, but this is following the vehicle that drove into crowds at a pride parade in Berlin, in the Tiergarten Park. One person has died and several others have life-threatening injuries in hospital. We might be able to get a translation on this now for you. Let's listen in.
Wird jetzt diese weiteren Einsatzmaßnahmen und die Ermittlungsmaßnahmen, die dazugehören, koordinieren. Wir stehen in ganz engem Austausch natürlich auch mit anderen Behörden im Bund und auch jetzt hier mit der Berliner Feuerwehr direkt vor Ort, um so schnell wie möglich auch das, was der Kollege der Feuerwehr Ihnen dann sicher im Nachgang noch sagen kann, die möglichen betroffenen Personen hier
fire services at the scene to try and establish what exactly has happened.
Aufgefangen werden und derzeit betreut werden.
Gab es die Staatsanwaltschaft schon vor Ort?
Die Staatsanwaltschaft ist sofort informiert worden. Die ist bereits mit an diesen Ermittlungen
People
dran.
are also being
üblich,
treated
dass die Staatsanwaltschaft und die
by
Generalstaatsanwaltschaft
psychological services
Berlin da
at
sofort
the
mit
scene.
involviert ist.
Gab es Festnahmen?
Es gab bislang keine Festnahmen, die jetzt in irgendeiner Art und Weise tatbezogen jetzt hier sich abspielen würden. Das hätte ich Ihnen sofort mitgeteilt.
Von wie vielen
No arrests have been made as yet related to this
von mehr
incident.
als 2200 Polizeieinsatzkräften jetzt hier vor Ort und im gesamten Bereich sind mehrere hundert Einsatzkräfte von uns eingesetzt.
More than
Sehr robust auch eingesetzt, das werden
2,200
Sie
police
erkannt haben, mit den
officers are presently at the scene.
Schutzhelmen und auch teilweise Schnellfeuerwaffen unterwegs. Nicht, dass sich davon einer ablenken lässt. Das ist das Standardvorgehen in solchen lebensbedrohlichen Einsatzlagen, wie wir sie nennen. Dann sind die Kräfte auch robust ausgestattet. Nichtsdestotrotz haben wir auch verdeckte Kräfte im Einsatz und natürlich Ermittlungskräfte, die hier alle weiteren Maßnahmen koordinieren, in Abstimmung mit dem, was sich natürlich hier abgespielt hat im großen Tiergarten, um so schnell wie möglich einen
Police are
möglichen
obviously
Ermittlungsstrang
around the
eröffnen zu
scene
können und
and
natürlich auch den
investigators
möglichen
are still trying to figure out
Das ist
exactly
jetzt unser
what
oberstes
happened.
Ziel, um dann so schnell wie möglich der möglichen oder des möglichen Tatverdächtigen habhaft zu werden.
Wird nach einer Person gefahndet oder nach mehreren?
Das wissen wir derzeit noch nicht. Wir fahnden erstmal nach dem, was
Police
wir
are
jetzt
trying
haben,
to catch
nach
the
einem oder
suspect,
mehreren
whether
Tatverdächtigen. Das sind die
female or
Zeugenaussagen
male, they
unterschiedlich.
don't
Deshalb
know,
haben wir
but
uns
they
das
are
sehr
trying to
breit
catch
aufgestellt. Kann ich Ihnen aber
the
noch keine Details
suspect
zu sagen,
as soon
weil
as
ich jetzt in
possible.
keiner Art und Weise hier mögliche Tatverdächtige, die das eventuell hier auch mitverfolgen, warnen möchte oder in die Lage versetzen möchte, sich auf irgendetwas
Witnesses have differed in their statements as to whether it is one or more than one suspect.
Kleiner Van, doch ein Kombi. Können Sie da noch mal was
Es handelt
sagen?
sich um einen Pkw, normale Bauausführung, Personenkraftwagen, der sowas wie so ein Minibus oder Minivan wäre. Genaues Fabrikat kann ich Ihnen momentan nicht sagen,
The
aber
vehicle was
der
a
Wagen ist auch durch
small
den Unfall
white
so stark verformt, dass
minivan.
man das nicht genau erkennen konnte auf den ersten Blick. Aber es handelt sich um ein weißes Fahrzeug, sowas wie ein Minivan, Mini-SUV, sowas in der Art ist es.
Was sagen Sie zu den Leuten, die gerade aktuell irgendwelche Täter
After the crash, police couldn't immediately establish the vehicle because it was so damaged by the force and the impact of the crash.
Die versuchen sich damit Klicks zu generieren. Das hilft niemandem. Und das verunsichert.
So earlier the police, as we heard, said that one person had died, but there are several who have life-threatening injuries, and police are wondering whether that number of those deceased, that one person that has died, whether that number will increase through the course of the night. They're not releasing any information regarding that deceased person at the moment because the family have not been informed, and that will be their priority now, to get in touch with the family of the person that has sadly lost their lives before they release any further details. So that the update that we were awaiting from police, in which they've said that they're coordinating with fire services at the scene to try and establish exactly what has transpired this evening. People are being treated by psychology teams at the scene, understandably, as an extremely traumatic event has occurred. Hundreds of thousands of people at this Pride parade for what would have been a joyous occasion and now has turned to a scene of, one death so far and many, many others injured. We were told that more than 2,200 police officers are at the scene. They're there alongside specialist investigators, and the major police priority at this moment in time is to find the suspect or suspects. They've said that witnesses are differing in their statements regarding the number of suspects, as whether it's one individual or whether there was more than one person seen leaving that vehicle. We were told previously that one person fled the scene on foot, but that hasn't been confirmed by police in this latest update. They went on to say that the vehicle is a small white minivan and that the vehicle was so severely damaged by the collision that it wasn't immediately identifiable, the make of the vehicle after that collision, and it was driven into the crowds. We know that they're asking people to stay away from the scene as they carry out further investigations, and we didn't get an update there as to whether there is any specialist line, telephone line or means of contact that people might utilise to find out about potential family members who might have been attending this Pride event in the city of Berlin. We know that they haven't contacted the family of the deceased as yet, so therefore have not released any further details on that. But the major update is that police are still looking for the suspect or suspects, male or female, that was driving that vehicle that drove into the crowds and killed one person and majorly injured several others who have life-threatening injuries in hospital. And we know that people are being treated at the scene as we speak by psychology teams as to what they will have witnessed and by any accounts, a really traumatic event that they will have witnessed this evening. Duncan?
Yeah, I mean, you can't even begin to imagine the trauma that anyone who was at that event has experienced in the last few hours if they were near that attack. I mean, what struck me about what you've just said, Gillian, is the fact that the police inside the last few minutes were very clear that it took them a while to identify the kind of vehicle it was because it was so badly damaged as a result of the speed and the impact, which is just horrific, isn't it? I mean, it must have been travelling a massive speed in order for you not to be able to identify what kind of vehicle it was. And, of course, police will also be keen to establish whether or not that vehicle was stolen or whether or not it's a vehicle of someone of, as you might say, someone of interest to them. And I'm sure we'll hear about that in the next few hours as well.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the information changing all the time. We do have an interviewee now on the line. That's a Berlin resident and freelance writer, Peter Carville. Thank you for speaking to us, Peter, in these awful circumstances, though. What were you able to see? Were you at the event?
No, I wasn't at the event. I was at home when I got the news, so I came straight out. From what I can understand, speaking to people all around central Berlin tonight, is that a car drove into the crowd near the Brandenburg Gate, which is where the main stage is for the celebrations. Immediately, police have caught off the whole event. They've evacuated the centre of the city, and there's very, very few people here right now. As I understand it, one person has been killed, 15 more have been injured, and the police are still searching for the perpetrator.
Yes, that's what we've heard from police. They say that witness accounts differ as to whether they're looking for a man or a woman and whether it's an individual suspect or whether there are several people that might have been involved.
Yeah, from what I understand, speaking to the few police I've spoken to, already walking through, and to people that were here when it happened, they are looking for one person, just one person only. But as I said, it's a live manhunt, and the police have told me to be careful walking around town, but they haven't told me who to look for exactly.
But the whole, as far as you're hearing, that whole area has been cordoned off and people have been told to go home. All those that were at the event, we're told that some 250,000 people attending this annual event, one of the largest in Europe. So there are no more people on the streets. Is that correct?
There are very, very few people here. I've just walked for 20 minutes around the centre and I've probably seen about 40 people at most. So the police did evacuate the area very quickly. A lot of people didn't know what was going on that were talking to as they came in, and there's still a lot of confusion right now.
And you were saying that from what you've heard, 15 people are in a life-threatening condition in hospital now.
15 people have been seriously injured. Whether that's life-threatening or not, I don't know. One person has reportedly been killed.
And police have said that they haven't contacted the family of that person who has sadly lost their lives. Can you tell us a bit more about this event that takes place annually in Berlin? Can you sort of set the scene of what it would have been like moments before the event?
Yeah, so this is one of the most highly attended gay pride events in Europe. There would have been 50, 60,000 people here. It's usually a huge celebration. I cannot imagine that the Berlin police and the city itself would not have had plans for security at this. But this will ripple out, particularly among the expat community over the next couple of days. People will come to terms with not only what's happened, but the fact that this has happened in a place where they assumed that they would be safe.
Yes, indeed. Peter, thank you very much for speaking to us. The pictures that you see are the scene in Berlin near the Brandenburg Gate at Tiergarten Park, where one person has sadly lost their life after a vehicle, a white minivan, drove into crowds. 15 other people are in hospital with serious injuries. Police are continuing the search for a suspect or possibly suspects.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Hello, you're watching Sky News. I'm Nick Qureshi. Here are the headlines. Breaking news, one person is killed and several are injured as a car drives into a crowd at a pride march in Berlin. Also ahead, the French military is deployed to help tackle wildfires as officials order the evacuation of Bordeaux's outskirts. While in Spain, the Prime Minister warns firefighters are in for a difficult time as they battle a fire burning towards Madrid. Here are major incidents declared by Police Scotland as a wildfire in the Cairngorms forces hundreds from their homes. Also ahead, social care, youth, employment and defence on the agenda, with Andy Burnham expected to give a major speech in the coming week. Plus, students in India call off so-called cockroach protests after the government agrees to all their demands. Hello, thank you for joining us this Sunday morning. Let's bring you up to date with this breaking news out of Germany. One person has died and several have been injured in Berlin. This after a car crashed into a crowd of people near the city's Pride parade. As you might expect, a major police operation